morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Mishna Berurah class as we are continuing along our studies of what is considered having a minyan and what qualifies to require someone to be in a minyan today. So we've talked about whom we cannot have in a minyan, whom we cannot count in the minyan. We've talked about that there is a requirement to have a minyan in order to recite Dvarim Shebet Kedusha. We've defined Dvarim Shebet Kedusha. Now we're going to talk about forcing people to stay in the minyan. So what does that mean, force people to stay in the minyan? Literally, those are literally the words of the Shulchan Aruch here. It says, and you have a city. And he calls it a city. Sounds more like doesn't sound like a city, because the city is usually defined as a place where you have lots of services in it, or you have people who come and make the shul all the time, and you have doctors, you have this and that. Here you have literally, it felt like you have at least 45 people in what the halacha defines as a city. Right? So that's like Gemara and Sanhedrin and Daf Gimel, but here he calls us a city that has but 10 adult males in it. And one of them wishes to leave, he doesn't say where, for the Yamim Noraim, for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. You force that person to stay, or to hire somebody else to stay there. So you can't just break the minyan. That's what they're saying. And if he's number 11, and the two people want to go, then the two of them, between them, need to hire somebody to stay. So basically, like, you want to go away for Rosh Hashanah, you don't want to be here, then you need to find a replacement, okay, in your minyan. And they contribute an equal amount. However, if one is rich and one is poor, so then you can do an income distribution system for that. Okay? Or you can do it based on income and then based on the number of people who are leaving, how many people are in each household. Okay? Now, how about to hire a chazan? So the chazan, is the chazan part of the 10 or not part of the 10? It doesn't matter. He says that hiring the chazan is an equal contribution from everybody. Okay? Everybody, whether you're staying, whether you're leaving. So you'll have, if you're leaving, you need to hire somebody to be in your place, and you have to pay for the chazan. If you're staying, you just need to pay for the chazan. Okay? And the Ramah adds, it doesn't matter how far in advance you're going to be going out of town. Okay? If you don't come back, you still have to pay for it. Okay? So that's the rule. So this applies as long as you will not return on Yom Tov. You have to pay for somebody to take your place in the minyan. So the Mishnah Berurah adds some interesting things over here. He says the following. So it's not a lot, but it's, as I say, it's not a lot, but it's enough. Okay, so the reason why this is important for the Yom Noraim is because everyone makes sure they always have a minyan for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay? Or they agree they're going to go someplace where there's a minyan. That's something that has to be agreed upon for everybody living there. Okay? And just like we learned previously, and we'll learn more in depth later on, in about another 100 Simanim, about forcing everybody to contribute to the shul and forcing everybody to contribute to Sefer Torah, that's what this is like. So, is it only for 11 is this rule? So it's not only for 11. So the Mishnah Berurah adds, if there's 12 and 3 want to leave, or if there's 13 and 4 want to leave, whenever everyone has to take a head count. Whoever is leaving has to hire people to make up for whoever's staying and hire a minyan. Okay? So the thing is, it's interesting over here, is we talked about in the Shulchan Aruch that everyone pays for their half. Okay? So it's not literally a half. The Mishnah Berurah explains, okay, that everyone has to contribute to replacing themselves with another person, okay, and they can't ruin the minyan for Yom Noraim. So if there's only 8 people left behind and 2 people are leaving, so they have to hire 2 more. So, but that's not really splitting half. That's you hiring one and him hiring the other one. Okay? So the point is that it's not really only about the money, okay? But if there's people left behind, and some people can leave behind their stuff without some security behind it, but the rich people just can't leave their stuff. They need to hire a house sitter and someone to watch the place. Okay, so it's not super equal, but the idea is that they have to kind of split it. So if the person who was leaving was going to have somebody else in their place, that you can't really ask the poor person to do anything more than replace themselves. So if he replaces himself, the other guy replaces himself, that would be splitting it half and half. Okay. So now, what if somebody was trying to get back home, okay, and they couldn't make it? So they have to send money, right? a letter saying, I can't get home, here's money to hire somebody else. So they have to do that. The person would have to, if the person demonstrates that there's some type of ones, there's something absolutely prohibiting them, whatever that might be. Maybe they've been thrown in jail. Maybe they have suffered damage, and it's too expensive for them to travel back without bringing all their stuff back. Something that would prevent them from going. Okay. That's something else. But if it's something where he owes money, or something that he was, let's say you trashed the hotel room where you were staying and they're not letting you leave, you have to pay for somebody to replace you, because that's your own negligence. Okay? And so you have to pay for filling up the minyan. So those are the rules for, let's say, for the minyan or for hiring the chazan, as we mentioned. Now, so the Mishnah points out that there's different rules by an esrog. Okay? The esrog, you have to, we'll learn about that at another point, where everybody says this is in 658, where people have to basically buy their own esrogim. Okay? So even though everyone goes into it, there's everyone's got to contribute and so on, and you can't kind of get out of it. Okay. Now, let's say you have these little far out shtetl type places, or these small yishuvim like they have in Israel, or a small community where they don't have a regular minyan. And they have to hire people to come make the minyan, and they have to hire a chazan because they don't know it so well. But there's other people around them who will also come and make the minyan. Okay? So if people are coming from outside of the yishuv itself, they don't have to contribute. They don't have to do that. Okay? Because they could go somewhere else. So it's only the people who are making up this one community and have some type of agreement. But if you have no agreement or social contract with them, you're not obligated. But if you wanted to go and you're calling them up saying, do you have a minyan? They can't then say, aha, you now have to pay. Okay? So, however, they don't have to contribute, but you could tell them, well, if you want to come, you have to pay. And that's where some of this idea of paying for seats on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur comes from. So even though they could go to another city, they don't have to give to this one. They're not obligated to it. Okay? So, but that community could go ahead and say, well, if you're going to come, you have to contribute something. Okay, more about this. We're in 22 now. So you can't force everybody to make a minyan, okay? On any other week other than the Yamim Norayim, according to Shulchan Aruch. Okay? And that's assuming you're only missing maybe one or two people. Unless there's some type of rule in the city to compel people to do more than one or two. Let's say they compel them to do 3, or maybe even 4. Okay? And if there are people who are making a minyan, they can also make a rule to compel them to also hire a chazan. And we talked about the rules of chazan in the last Siman as well, in 54. And the Ramah adds, so even where there's a place where there's not a regular minyan, okay, each one can go ahead and impose different types of penalties on each other that they should come to make the minyan, okay, so that it should not continuously miss the minyan, okay. And so we'll learn later on in the rules of basic Knesset that we are going to compel people to show up. Okay? So, again, if there is a minyan, of the people in the city, then they have to pay for a cantor. And if people are skipping the minyan and shul, then you're allowed to go ahead and penalize them so they come to shul. But there should be a regular minyan. And that's also what we'll see later on in Siman 150, right? That they are going to compel each other to build a synagogue. So the point is that when you have 8 or 9 people in this little area, they could say, you know what, we should stay here and make a minyan, and we're going to hire somebody to do that, okay? But if someone decides to go somewhere else where they have a minyan, they can't force them to stay. So they have to all kind of agree to it, okay? Now, if there is 3 or 4 people in the community, let's say, that, you know, you can also include people they hire. So if there's like 3 or 4 wealthy people, but they've hired tutors for their children, and they have people who work for them who are also Jewish, and so between 3 or 4 of them, there's 10, 12, 13 people, then this rule could apply, and you could tell people, I can't let you take off time for this Shabbos, you have to make the minyan. Okay? And then that's when the obligation to hire a chazan also falls on them. And so we also learned previously that also the may need to hire a rav. So if they want to teach the children, so they could hire the rav, hire the shots, right? Hire some of the teacher services. Okay. So if you at whatever point you do have a minyan and you regularly start to meet, there becomes this obligation according to the Ramah to basically make a regular meeting place. Okay. And furthermore, the Berurah adds, says in small communities they can force the young kids and the teachers to come to the shul, okay, but it's not a regular minyan, because one thing is teaching Torah and another thing is coming to the minyan, okay. So, in a large community, then teachers can go ahead and have their own minyan, but otherwise they should be coming to make the minyan in the big shul. Okay, but if in a small place, they can say, yeah, you got to come here and make the minyan. Okay. So he brings a funny story over here. So this is a really cool story. So one time, this is Gemara in Brachos. It says Rabbi Elazar came to shul and they didn't have a minyan, so he had his servant with him. So he set his servant free, and that made the tenth man. Okay. And so from here we learned that a person should not flinch, or should make an effort and put significant effort into making sure that they don't be lazy about making the minyan. Okay, and the mitzvah is so important that a person should try, especially in a small place, that they look to make a minyan regularly, and not have one that's that only meets infrequently. Because even the person who is part of the first 10 gets a lot of reward for being part of the first 10. So how much more so when you actually help make the minyan regularly? Because now you're what's called a mazaka es rabim, and you benefit the public. Okay, that is the end of Siman 55. So let's take a look over here, and let's take a look and move into 56 a little bit. So over here we're going to talk about in Siman 56 responding to Kaddish. Okay. So the first thing that we learn is one should focus in responding to the Kaddish. Okay, what does that mean? So the Ramah adds, a person should not break or pause in between the words Yehei Shmei Rabbah and the word Mivarach. It should be Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivarach. It should not be Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivarach. Don't take a breath. Okay, and so therefore you should make sure that those are all connected together. You should also respond to it, the Shulchan Aruch says, loudly, and the person should make every effort to hear Kaddish in shul. Okay? Ramah adds, you should also stand when responding to Kaddish, and every davar sheber kedusha. Okay, so every time they're gathering together to recite Kaddish, kedusha, baruch hu, you should be standing for the response to that. And someone who comes to shul and he hears that the congregation is reciting Kaddish, you should respond with them, okay? Even though you didn't hear the Shliach Tzibur say the first paragraph of the Kaddish. Okay, and so too, if you hear them reciting the Kaddish, you need to say the words Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivarach La'olam Le'almaya along with the congregation, and And then also, the Ramah adds that when you start with the words of the Kaddish Yiskadel, so there are a few psukim you should say along with them as well. So those psukim are that, or say these. There's a couple of psukim, which comes from the book of Psalms, chapter 25:6. So the idea is you should recite that to yourself while the Kaddish is being recited. Okay, and the reason why you should respond to Kaddish, Mr. Berurah explains, is a person should put their full effort into and all of their intention into it, because you're trying to make sure that you say with a full heart and a full soul that you believe that God's name should be aggrandized amongst everyone. You should also make sure you're listening to the Kaddish as well, along with responding to Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah. Okay, and the Amen is not just some Amen you say afterwards. There's two other Amens in there as well. Okay, so you shouldn't also talk during Kaddish. You shouldn't talk during Kedusha. You shouldn't talk during Baruch Hu. Don't say anything. Okay, so those are other places where you need to not talk. Okay, and so it's also really important that you shouldn't distract yourself during these things by reading through Divrei Torah. Okay, you should be focusing on the davening as well. Okay, so don't be distracted. Don't read your email. Don't read psukim. Don't read psukim from Tanakh. Don't read Agadata. Just focus on the Kaddish. Okay. So let's talk about the Nusach of Kaddish. We'll end this for today. So the Nusach of Kaddish is Yis Gadel v'Yis Kadesh Shemei Rabbah. So the words Yis Gadel v'Yis Kadesh come from the book of Yechezkel. It's from chapter 38 and pasuk 33, and it says that that by Gog Magog, by the war of Gog Magog, that's when the name of Hashem will be the most aggrandized. And it says on that very day, God will be one, His name will be one. And that's where the beginning of the Kaddish comes from. Is that through all of our experiences, the culmination is God's glory will always shine through. And the pronunciation is differentiated. So the question is it Yis Gadal, v'Yis Kadash, or is it Yis Gadel, v'Yis Kadesh? Well, the Mishnah Berurah says that it is Hebrew, and so therefore the Daled should be pronounced in both of them with a tzereh, the A sound, the two dots underneath. Okay? And you shouldn't pronounce it with a shva or a patach. V'Yis Gadel, v'Yis Kadesh. Okay? So you should not pronounce it like that. And you should also make sure they make the g sound in Yis Gadel also very, very focused, and make sure that you really pronounce Yis Gadel the Yis Kadesh. So you should be very pronounced in those two words specifically. Okay, and give it a little bit of space. And also make sure when we get to the word Yis Halal, make sure that Hey gets pronounced well as well. Okay, and also the word Divrah. So some people go Divrah. It's Divrah Kir Usei in the Kaddish. Okay. So you should make sure to say it nice and slowly. So when you get to the part where it says V'imru Amen at the end of the first paragraph, the Shaliach Tzibur should say that in one shot and not take a break, because then the Kehillah is going to go ahead and say Amen with him. And so they're going to go straight into it. You should not stretch out as leading the congregation. You should not stretch out that Amen, in order that people will miss the chance to say it. Okay? You should take a little pause between Amen. So say Amen, Yehei Shmei Rabbah, right? Then you go on for that. Okay? And so every time you say Amen at the end of any bracha, you should take a little break before you go on to it. So, for example, before you recite Modim Anach Nilach, after the bracha before it, okay. So you should also take a little bit of a break over there, and then go to Modim Anach Nilach. So same idea. Okay. So the another little thing that's interesting to point out is that it's Yehei Shemei, with what's called a mapike. It makes a sound on its own, and not Yehei Shmei, right? It's not the word's not Shmei. It's Yehei Shemei, with a little bit of breath at the end. Make sure that you acknowledge in the language, in the Aramaic language, that there is a Hayed and that his name be praised. Okay? And it's Mivarach. So there's a lot of these cute little things in there. So the Mishnah Berurah does not agree with the nusach you will find in the Art Scroll Siddur. You have to look in either Siddur Vilna or Siddur Aliyos Eliyahu. There's a few of them that follow this opinion of the Mishnah Berurah to put these different rules in there. And so therefore one should really focus on that. If you want to follow the Mishnah Berurah's opinion, you have to follow Siddur that follows his opinion. So in the Art Scroll Siddur, they take the opposite approach, that the first words, for example, are in Aramaic, and it's Yis Gadal v'Yis Kadash. And that's how it's pronounced in Aramaic, and that is their opinion, since most of it's written in Aramaic. So that is the opinion of a number of Rishonim, a number of early rabbis, and they follow that approach. Okay? Let's see. You should also recite the Yehei Shemei Rabbah loudly, and the reason why is so that way you focus better, and you're looking to also kind of shatter if there's any bad things floating around in the stratosphere, people looking to do bad things to the Jewish people. By saying this and reciting it loudly, you will help to arouse people to make sure to pray for their being saved by Hashem from terrible things. So, like for now, to ask that the Jewish people be saved from the terrible events in Gaza and from Hamas and Hezbollah, that these things should all be a big focus in reciting Yehei Shemei Rabbah. Okay, so we said that listening to Kaddish is an important part of the mitzvah, not only to respond Yemei Yehei Shemei Rabbah in the right spot, but also to know what the words are being said. And in fact, responding to Amen Yehei Shemei Rabbah is more important than even responding to other parts of the Shemona Esrei, like Kedusha and Modim. So, if you hear lots of people in different, let's say, Minyanim that are running concurrently in one of those big shuls, okay, and then you can answer Kaddish to one or the other. You can respond to both. You hear one, respond to that one, and when you hear the second one, respond to that one. And let's say you have two shuls, and you see they're different places in davening. Okay, so the advice is over here is that if you are at one that's at Kedusha in the beginning of Shemona Esrei, supposed to be finished with it, go respond to the Kedusha, and then you'll hear the Kaddish after Shemona Esrei. Okay, and so. But however, one thing is for sure, you can't respond to another Kaddish when you're in the middle of this Kaddish. So while you're listening to this Kaddish, respond only to this one, and especially if you're saying Yehei Shemei Rabbah. Okay? So the Ramah required us to stand. The Mishnah Berurah says you have to stand while reciting Amen Yehei Shemei Rabbah. And some people say that you have to stand until the end of the second Amen of the second paragraph. Okay? And so that's what the Ramah says. So the Mishnah Berurah brings down an opinion. He says that you don't have to stand for every Kaddish. So you only stand for the Kaddishes that have you already standing. Like, for example, the Kaddish after Hallel. Okay? Finish responding to that Hallel, to that Kaddish, then you can sit. And the Mishnah Berurah says, but we should be strict and follow the custom to stand. Okay? So he brings down, however, that the Ari, in the Kavanos, in his Siddur, he said that he would for every Kaddish he would stand. Okay, so every Kaddish that was after the Amidah, for Shach Shmit Kamar, he would stand for that. Okay, and for Kaddish Tis Kabal, after you finish doing after you finish putting the Sefer Torah away. Okay. And then the Kaddish for the night on Shabbos, so that when he was standing to say Kaddish at that point, he would say to stand. So what's interesting is that it sounds like you don't have to stand for a number of Kaddishes that are like at the beginning of the service, like the Kaddish they say before Pesukei Zimra, and the Kaddish that they say during Baruch Hu. However, the custom is to stand because, generally speaking, you're already standing for the Shir Shel Yam and for Yishtabach. These customs are brought down in the Minhagei Mahari Weil, one of the old works of Minhagei Ashkenaz. So therefore, you'll if you don't see it mentioned in your Sidur, if you get a more elaborate Sidur with the commentary in it, they mention that this is the old Ashkenazic custom, and so therefore it's appropriate to stand in those places as well. And we can come back in and talk about some more of these rules next time. We'll revisit it, but I thought we would spend more time on the previous halachas, but it's good to do a little chazara for next time. So, but we're running into Yantif, so we're gonna have to hold the class here. Everyone have a wonderful Yantif. We will pick up Mishnah Berurah next week. Ois Yantif. Everyone have a Kabbalas Torah Sameach and enjoy the cheesecake for those that have the minhag and staying up all night with learning. Everyone have a Chag Sameach. Cult.